let's talk about some math. So pull out your textbook and flip to page 36. We're going to be talking about subtracting tenths. So remember, tenths are just one place over to the right of our decimal place. That's our tenths place. So we're going to be discussing subtracting tenths. I think you'll catch on pretty quick to this. So on page 36, let's look at task 1. Let me see. It's hard because everything's topsy-turvy on here. So number 15. Number 15 on page 36. It wants us to subtract 8 tenths. That's not true. It wants us to subtract 2 tenths from 8 tenths. So here I drew out, let me find my marker. I drew out 8 tenths, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're going to subtract 2 tenths from our 8 tenths. Well, that's simple, right? You can probably do this in your head. I'm just going to scratch out 2 of them. And now how many tenths do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Makes sense, right? Because what's 8 minus 2? 6. So here we have 8 tenths minus 2 tenths is 6 tenths, right? And we would write that like this, 0.6. Makes sense. So let's look at the next one. Now this next one isn't subtracting a tenth from a tenth like the first one. I need something to erase. I had a nice little eraser. What did I do with it? Oh, so it goes. Maybe I can use, nope. I'll just use my finger. So this next one, it wants us to subtract 2 tenths from 1 whole. Okay? So 1 whole minus 2 tenths. Well, look at page 36. What happens, so this is 15b. What happens is our little man, Ed, changes our 1, he renames 1 whole into 10 tenths. So let me draw this out. Right? Because, remember, 1, 1 we can trade and rename to 10 tenths. So now it's like we're subtracting 2 from 10, right? Which you can do in your head, right? So the answer is 8 tenths, okay? We have 10 tenths, right? Because we traded in our 1 whole for 10 tenths, and we're taking 2 away. So 8 tenths. Now, if it was more complicated, or if you can't or don't feel comfortable doing it in your head, we could also set this problem up like this. Okay, notice in the problem on exercise 15, task 15 in your book, it doesn't have 1.0, right? Because 1 whole automatically has 0 in its tenths place. It just wasn't written out. So we can just go ahead and write out 0.0. Doesn't change the value. The value is still 1. And then line it up so that the 0 in our tenths place is lined up with the 2 in our tenths place. And the 1 in our ones place is lined up with the 0 in this one place. So here, same thing, right? We can't subtract 2 from 0, right? So this is our renaming again. We're taking our 1, 1 and trading it in for 10 tenths, right? That's what we did. We traded in our 1, 1 for 10 tenths. And now we'll subtract 10 tenths. We'll subtract 2 tenths from 10 tenths. What is 10 minus 2? It is 8. And now here we have 0 minus 0, which is 0. That gives us the same answer that we got earlier. Makes sense, right? So now let's look at C. Okay. C, we're subtracting 2 tenths from 3. Okay, now what you could do, let's see what they do. They change one of their ones, so we have 3 ones. They change one of those into 10 tenths. Okay, so basically they split this. They split it, keeping 2 wholes. And they take one of their ones and they make it into 10 tenths. So by doing that, we can go ahead and subtract 2 tenths from these 10 tenths. 10 tenths is fun to say, isn't it? So, and we're left with 8 tenths. The thing here is we can't forget the 2 ones that we left behind and didn't mess with. So our answer is 2 ones, 2 whole, and 8 tenths, which would look like this, right? 2.8. Another way you could think about this is how many tenths, you could think how many tenths is 3 whole, or 3 ones, right? We know that if we traded in all of our ones and made them tenths and renamed them to tenths, it would be how many tenths? 30, right? Because if we trade in 1 to make tenths, we have 10 tenths. So we trade in 3, we'll have 30 tenths. Okay, then you can think about this problem as 30 minus 2, which is 28. Here, though, it doesn't mean we would have, it would not be this, right? That's not 28 tenths. That's 28 hundredths. That would be wrong. 28 tenths is the same as 2.8, right? 2.8. Because we could trade in, we would do the opposite after we did this problem. We would rename 20 of our tenths to be 2 ones, and then we would have 8 tenths left over. Okay? If that's confusing to you, we can always just line it up vertically. That's the way I like to do it because my brain is running in a million different places, and sometimes it can't keep up with math inside of it. So I like to write it out. Remember, 3 ones has a tenth place of 0 already. So if we write out with a decimal, we can just write 3.0. Then let's subtract our 2 tenths. Here again, we're going to have to borrow. So this is the same thing we did. We're just doing it vertically now. We're taking one of our ones from our 3 and giving it to our tenths place. So we trade in 1 1 for 10 tenths. That still leaves us with 2 ones left. It's like what we did just a second ago. So now 10 minus 2 is 8, and 2 minus 0 is 2. So we get the same answer, 2.8, right? Pretty simple. Okay. 16 is pretty much what we've been discussing. So let's just skip down to 17. Let's do a few together. So You can do these if you have a whiteboard at home, or if you don't, you can do these on a piece of paper, but let's do 17A together. I'll do it here, you do it there. For these, maybe you can do them in your head, that's fine. If you try doing them in your head and you keep getting them wrong by doing them in your head, I suggest you just write them out vertically so that there's no mistakes. So if you don't show your work, that's fine. I'm going to write mine out because, like I said, a lot going on up here, if you can believe it. It's usually silly things like daydreaming about, I don't know, being a secret spy somewhere. But that's neither here nor there. So I'm going to write it out. You don't have to. Let's do 17A. 5/10 minus 3/10. I think even this one I could have done in my head, but I still wrote it out. Okay. Simple, easy peasy, right? 5 minus 3 is 2. 0 minus 0 is 0. 2/10, right? We had 5/10. We took away 3/10. We have 2. Okay, let's skip on down. So I think those are going to be too easy. To D. 17D as in dog. 1 whole minus 4/10. Okay, you do it there, I'll do it here. Okay. Here. If you did this in your head, you probably thought of this 1 whole as 10/10 and then subtracted 4/10. Good job. That's what I did basically, but I wrote it out. So I traded in my 1 for 10/10. 10 minus 4 is 6, and 0 minus 0 is 0. So the answer is 6/10. Let's do E. E as in elephant. 2 whole minus 7/10. Okay. All right. Here. Okay. Same thing. If you did it in your head, you probably thought of this either as 20/10 minus 7. Okay, so it's basically like 20 minus 7. Or you thought about splitting your 2 into 1, 1, and 10/10. Here, that's basically what I did, right? I got my 2, I crossed it out, traded in 1 for 10/10. 10 minus 7 is 3. I still have 1, 1 left over. 1 minus 0 is 1. Okay, so 1.3. Let's do F, as in frog, or Fred. F. 4 whole minus 9/10. Okay. Here, could have thought about it as 40/10 minus 9. That probably would have gotten you here. I traded in one of my 1s for 10/10. 10 minus 9 is 1. I still had 3 1s left over. 3 minus 0 is 3. Okay, I'm going to stop us there. Let's do one more. I can only have these be 15 minutes long or else it won't upload. And I'm running dangerously close. I think, you know what? I trust you have the hang of it. I'm not going to do a part 2. I think you've got this. So you can go ahead and start on exercise 20. Yeah, love and